Good evening, welcome to Singapore Tonight. I'm Yvonne Yong. Our top story, Singapore's Labour movement says it has not decided which candidate it will support for the presidential election. But it did explain why presidential hopeful and former Deputy Prime Minister Tony Tan was invited for a closed-door dialogue with 500 union representatives today. Ho Yin with more.
In the past, the Labour movement had openly supported former President Ong Teng Cheong and President S.R. Nathan when they stood for election. That's because both men came from within the union ranks. Mr Ong was a former Secretary General of the National Trades Union Congress, or NTUC, while Mr Nathan led its first Labour research unit. But Dr Tony Tan was never part of the union. The closed-door dialogue covered topics such as the economy and Dr Tan's working style as president if elected. Now, with the presidential election expected in the next few weeks, the timing of this event raises questions as to whether Dr Tan has the support of the unions. But NTUC remains non-committal. It says it invited Dr Tan because it had never invited him before and that its members were curious to know more about the man. NTUC said it may also invite the other potential candidates for a dialogue if union leaders request for it.
We want a person who has got that kind of stature, that kind of exposure and understanding the fundamentals of the role of a president.
So you're saying that Dr. Tan is one?
He fits the bill. We are mindful of who we think should be president. But decision is not. Then we've not decided whether to endorse or not to endorse.
As for Dr Tan,
well, as a presidential candidate, I must welcome endorsements from anybody. I mean, if anybody or any organization wants to endorse me, I would be very happy.
It seems at least one union leader has made up his mind.
My union totally supports Dr. Tony Tan for his presidency bid. And in this way, what we will do is we'll encourage our total membership, staff, and including their families to, when the election is held, to support Dr. Tony Tan.
Other union leaders say they would like dialogues with other potential candidates so they can be assessed. Dr. Tan is one of 5 people who have expressed interest in running for president.
And new rules and regulations have been issued on the presidential election, which must be held by the end of this month. The format of the ballot paper has been changed to include the photographs of candidates. The Elections Department says this will allow voters to recognise the candidates more easily and facilitate their marking a voting choice on the ballot paper. Now, political observers are expecting the Prime Minister to issue the writ of election in the next day or two. Channel News Asia's S. Ramesh has more on rules for the presidential polls.
Many of the rules gazetted today are similar to those which were laid down during the recent general election. To give you some examples, the rules gazetted define what's an assembly centre, what's considered a poster, and what constitutes an election activity. Several items like diaries, keychains, t-shirts, miniature flags and soft toys and even tissue paper have been excluded from being election advertising. In fact, some of the opposition parties had during the recent general election distributed tissue packs to voters. Now, the Gazette notification also states that the election period begins with the date a writ of election is issued for the presidential election. It will end with the start of the eve of polling day, which is now called the cooling off day. President S.R. Nathan will not be seeking another term of office. So far, 5 Singaporeans have expressed their interest to contest the polls. But the key document in question is the Certificate of Eligibility. It's a must for potential candidates to contest the presidential polls. So far, 3 of them have already submitted their forms for the Presidential Election Committee to assess their eligibility.
Nearly 5